6, quarantine history, still in my garage. Couple housekeeping things real fast. Number one, I still have people that didn't turn in that small assignment, which is slightly concerning. If you're not aware, I've had some people tell me they didn't know that it was there, or they couldn't find it, or I've had a plethora of excuses why it wasn't done. Just so you're aware, you should be checking every single morning on the updates page in your Schoology. I put a detailed instructions there for the day every morning at about 8:30. That tells you exactly what needs to be done that day. When it came to the assignment, I told you exactly where it was in that little update. And so you should be checking that thing every single day. If you're one of the people who hasn't done it, you'll probably be hearing from guidance counselors pretty soon. I know that there was a list sent out the other day of kids who aren't turning things in, or kids who don't seem to be out there in the ether and following along. And so if you're one of those people, you know, you can expect the next couple of days to be getting some messages or phone calls, or your parents getting some phone calls from some of the guidance counselors and other people. But every single day it's there. If you go to the update page in Schoology, it tells you exactly what I expected from the day. Most of the time it's watch this video and then watch something out of the resource page, or a small assignment like the other day. I have a couple more of those coming, and then the test is right around the corner. Two readings I'm going to get through with you in the next couple of days, and then you'll be taking that test. I'm really considering real fast the time limit thing, and the issue with the time limit thing is the way that Schoology has been going in and out. I'm not sure that the time limit is a good idea, especially if you get thrown out of there and then not be able to get back in time. And so I think I'm going to get rid of that. I know I brought it up, I thought it was a good idea, but with the issues that Schoology is having, I don't think that it is. Housekeeping. The only other thing I could tell you is I got sunburn on my head cutting grass. I kept my distance away from everybody when I was out there, except for the lawnmower and the weed whacker, but it sure is nice outside, and hopefully it's a sign of good things to come. So back to the history thing. I hope you enjoyed your tour of Oklahoma. I think most people did, except for those people who are actually from Oklahoma, and you know who you are. It was all in good fun, and so it's just to review real fast and put you back in place. This unit started with the Louisiana Purchase, then we did the War of 1812, 2 reasons for the war. They'll be on the test: impressment and aiding the Indians on the British were aiding the Indians on the frontier. Battle of New Orleans, Andrew Jackson, even though it was fought after the war was over. Treaty of Ghent, that's on the test, it ends it. Monroe is going to be elected president after the war, 1812. You have this sense of nationalism for the first time. My dog, if you can hear him, must be a leaf outside in the yard that's threatening us. We had the Monroe Doctrine, which is basically a warning to European powers to stay out of the Western Hemisphere. And then we had Black Hawk's War and the Sauk Indian Chief Black Hawk, and then being removed from Northwest Territory, which I will just tell you real quick. You know, obviously Black Hawk is far from innocent in the whole thing, but you know, when it comes to murdering women and children as they try to swim across the river, it's taking it a little bit far. Ultimately, you know, I think to myself sometimes, you know, what would you do? What would you do to defend your own home? And you know, I think that Black Hawk and his people are in that situation, and he probably does what most people do. He's going to try to defend it and fight back, and like I said, he's far from innocent in the whole thing. But you know, the United States government, I think, in a lot of ways goes too far. But that's not here nor there. And then when we left, we were dealing with the Indian Removal Act, which Jackson's going to push through Congress. And I'll remind you, it was 28-19 in the Senate, 101-97 in the House. It doesn't pass by very much, but ultimately it does. They're going to create the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and they'll be responsible for removing the 5 civilized tribes from the southeastern United States into Indian Territory, which is today presently is Oklahoma. Enough said about Oklahoma. And so we'll start the removal process. The Choctaws were the first to go. They're pulled out of there in the winter of 1831, 1832. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that marching people thousands of miles in the open in the winter is probably not the best idea. But I'm not a travel agent, I guess. The United States government's going to decide that's a good time. Part of their motivation is that there won't be as many bugs, but there also, is going to be cold and ice and people exposed to the elements. They're going to give up 7.5 million acres to the United States. Have you ever been on a trip and gone somewhere to the beach or vacation or something, and when you got there you thought, I wish I would have brought this, I wish I would have brought that? The United States government is really in the same boat. The only problem is what they didn't bring enough of is food, which is pretty important when you're moving a couple thousand people, a couple thousand miles. Ultimately, about a quarter of the Choctaws will die on their way to Oklahoma. But they'll be the first Indians essentially moved by the federal government. The next group to leave are going to be the Creeks. Now, one of the things that's going to happen is some of the Choctaw will run away, they'll head back to their tribal lands, and the Creeks are going to find out exactly what has happened and how terrible the situation is, and they're going to do everything they can to stay on their land. Ultimately, in the end, they won't be able to resist the United States government, the United States Army. About 14,500 of them will be captured. Some of them will be moved in chains. And ultimately, it's sort of essentially the same result when the Creeks are moved. Now, the Creeks had already given up tons of land to Andrew Jackson earlier during the War of 1812, but this will be the end of them here too in the eastern United States, and so they're going to be moved also. And then in the winter of 1837, 1838, I'm not sure why they keep moving people in the winter, but they do. It'll be the Chickasaws are going to be removed from Alabama. The United States government is getting a little better at this. The suffering won't be so bad for them, but ultimately you're moving people by foot thousands of miles in the winter. Some people are just old, some people get sick, you have rain, you have snow, you have ice, you have people get delayed along the rivers because they can't cross and the ferries can't get across. It's just a really, really ugly situation. And then you come to the Cherokees. I have to tell you, the Cherokees and the Choctaws were this way a lot too. The stupid rabbits. Hold on. Sorry again. The Cherokee Nation will be the one that is next, and they were called the 5 civilized tribes for a reason. I have to tell you real quick that when it came to George Washington, when it came to most presidents prior to Andrew Jackson, the policy towards the Indians was a lot different. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, most of those presidents encouraged the Indians of the southeastern United States, encouraged them to assimilate. Indians has always been told sort of the same thing, and obviously I'm generalizing here, that if you want to keep your land, you can. If you want to keep it, you can. You only have to do one thing. And that one thing, in the simplest form, you need to act white. If you want to stay, you need to act white. You can't be running around the woods yipping and yapping, and you can't live here in the summer and go over there in the winter and come back here in the summer, and you can't do it. You need to act white. And what do I mean by act white? You need to build a house. You need to put up a fence. You need to plow a field. You need to stay there all year long. You need to learn to read and write and speak English. You need to become Christian. And the tribes of the southeastern United States, and none more than the Cherokees and the Choctaws were close behind, none more than the Cherokees were doing that. I will tell you very quickly that all five, not so much the Seminoles, 4 of the 5 civilized tribes had members who owned slaves. I mean, I don't know how much whiter you get. And so they were doing what the government told them they needed to do to stay. And in the end, it's just not going to matter. And quickly, I'll just tell you that no one was doing that more than the Cherokees. And this is starting to get a little bit long. And so I don't want to get too far into it today. I guess we'll make this one relatively short and then spend some more time tomorrow. Please do me a favor. Please check Schoology and the updates every day. It's being sent to everyone in the class. I don't want to have to turn your name into the guidance counselor. I don't want to have to I don't want to have to fail anybody during something like this. Even if it goes to a pass-fail grade, which I'm not sure and I don't have any inclination of that, if you're not turning in assignments, you're going to fail. And who knows if summer school is even going to be offered to you at this point. So please, if you have friends, tell them. I'm sure that Twitter and Snapchat and all that crap is still working. And so please spread the word to people. Check the updates every day. I don't give you a whole lot. Make sure those things are getting done. When we come back tomorrow, we'll talk about the Cherokees. And like I said, more than any other tribe, they were really kind of doing what the government asked. It just was taking a little longer than white people, I guess, really wanted. Of course, in the end, it probably wouldn't have mattered anyways. All right, hey, see you tomorrow.
It's